The fortune is in the... Guys, JR talked a lot about yesterday about magic moments. So many great magic moments in this company, so many great stories. One of the stories he mentioned was of 4 years ago, MAIC, where he crossed the waterfall with a wheelbarrow. I remember this distinctly because that was my very first week in the business, and I was watching it at home on my computer screen. And I remember saying to my computer, I am in that wheelbarrow, and I believe. And that was a magic moment for me. I launched my business that week in Redding, California, at 21 years old. And that exact same week, my parents, my sponsors, my mentors, executive directors, David and Stacy Whited, who also just so happened to be the only other unfranchised owners in Redding, California, moved to Houston, Texas. And I remember standing there thinking, if this is going to happen, it's because I'm going to make it happen. I was scared. I remember standing in my driveway, the cars were all packed, their stuff was all loaded up, and I remember talking to my dad, and I'm like, I don't know, am I going to be able to make this thing happen? He says, Colton, I promise you will not fail with this. You will make this thing happen. And I latched on to that belief. Sometimes you struggle with your own personal belief, but you can latch on to somebody else's belief, and I held on to that belief like it was the only thing I had for months. But they gave me some tools, and I want to tell you guys what they gave me in that time frame. They gave me a weekly checklist. They gave me a setup of this is what you should be doing every single week. They gave me a $20 gift card to a local coffee shop. And I remember they said, if you buy $1 coffees and show the plan 20 times, you're going to be successful with this business. Now, obviously, it took more than 20 times, but they knew if I showed the plan 20 times, I was going to develop the skills and I was going to end up being okay. And I'm so thankful for that. The last thing that they gave me was the ability to show the compensation plan. They taught me, we walked through it, they taught me exactly how to draw out the compensation plan. And I remember one of my very first appointments. I got the first real appointment. Like I was so excited, I was so fired up, I was going through my script, made the phone call, showed up at this guy's house on Wednesday night. His name is David Black. I think he's here today somewhere. Somewhere over there, apparently. And I show up, and he had 5 people sitting around the kitchen table ready to see the business plan with him. I'm 21 years old. I'm about to walk in, I'm about to walk right back out, man. I have no idea what I'm doing. I was terrified. I start out, I'm like, okay, I got this. All right. Step 1, apply. Step 2, create. Step 3, oh dear God, what's step 3? Totally froze in front of these 5 people. And David's leaning over, he's like, it's gonna be okay. I'm like, I know. I'll figure it out. There's a video. Can we watch the video? We transitioned over to the couch. 3 of his friends genuinely walked out. They're like, cute kind of thing. And they walked out of that appointment. David Black stayed. And we went back and forth, and he was asking some questions. I was, playing the video. He'd ask questions like, what's the BV to the dollar ratio? And I'm like, dude, I forgot step 3, man. I have no idea. But I know somebody who does. Mom! He's got questions! True story. Some of you guys are terrified to go show the plan. You guys want 3 amazing words when you show the plan? I don't know. I don't know. All I know is, I don't know, all I know is, and then connect them to your senior business partners. Connect them to people that do know, because you're part of a team. You're part of a team. If you don't know the answer, there's somebody who does. And I leaned heavily on that process. And that's how I began my business. I remember leaving that appointment. I was telling Dad, I'm like, man, that was terrifying. That was so bad. And I was like, man, it was bad. And he's like, I get it. He's like, but did you get the follow-up booked? And I was like, absolutely. He's coming to a meeting on Thursday. We're going to see it again. He had some more questions then. I better read some more before that appointment. And he says, oh, you killed it then. Congratulations. The follow-up was booked. Eventually, I got better at showing the plan. I was like, man, that was a good appointment. I remember walking out of an appointment. The lady cried. I felt like her life was changed. It was such a good appointment. I called up Dad. I was like, man, you should have seen it. Like, angels were singing in the background. The lights were, oh, it was so good. And he's like, what's her next step? That's so good, Colt. What's her next step? And I was like, I don't know. I sent her home with some stuff. I'm not really sure what the next step is, but, she said she's really interested and excited. Fail. He said, showing the plan is a pass-fail system, and it all comes down to booking the follow-up. If I could say there's one skill that's gotten me to where I'm at today, it's I went all in on learning the skill of booking the follow-up. Mom and Dad said that everyone you sit down with, picture them like a thermometer. The more time that you spend with them talking about the business, the higher this thermometer is going to go. People start out, right? I have no interest. Anybody ever been at that appointment? They start out. They have no interest. Clearly, everything's indicating it. But you start to show them. You start to answer some questions. You start to help them. You start to cast the vision of where we're going, and the thermometer rises. They're like, sure, okay. I'll be a customer. I'll try some of the, cash back. If every single appointment you raise this thermometer just a little bit and then book the next step, you're going to be in great shape. Eventually, they're like, man, I'm interested in figuring out how to create this ongoing income. They come to a presentation, like, okay, I'm interested. You got my interest. What's next? Right? Eventually, they're sitting up here on these front rows, and they're like, get out of my way. I'm going to make millions, right? You guys see Drayton yesterday? Woo! Man, I was having a hard time sitting in my seat. I was like, yeah, flip those cards, man, flip those cards. I was on it. It was so good. But you keep booking the follow-up, and the thermometer continues to rise. But at any point that you don't book the follow-up, the thermometer starts to drop. So you've got to learn how to book the follow-up. I found this came down to two different pieces. One was technical, one was a mindset. I'm going to go through both pieces here on how to book the follow-up. And the first part is, at the end of every appointment, I ask a very key question. You guys want the question? You guys interested in this question? What's the question? Come on. I love having you on the front. That's so good. Based on what you have seen so far, would you have enough interest to continue evaluating further? You can ask that in your own words, however that comes out for you. But you need to establish that they have interest in looking further. And if the thermometer rises at all, they're like, okay, what they start out as, I have no interest. But then it starts to rise. They got a little bit of interest. Okay, I'll check this out. That's your only job. That's your job when you show the plan, pass-fail system. Did the thermometer rise a little bit? Congratulations, you're going to be a rock star. As long as you ask this question, based on what you've seen so far, would you have enough interest to continue evaluating further? That's the question. The statement, if they say yes, is this. You guys want the statement? Yes. Great. Here's what needs to happen next. Here's what needs to happen next. This keeps the flow moving. It lets them know that you actually know what needs to happen next. So before you walk into an appointment, you need to know what's coming up next in your area. We're leaving this meeting. I'm assuming if you're part of a GMTSS area, you have a local seminar coming up in about 5, 6, 7 weeks. That's the next thing. And hopefully before that, you got other meetings you can book them into. There's a home presentation, an unfranchised business presentation. Your job is to get them interested in moving forward by saying, great, here's what needs to happen next. It lets them know you're part of a system, and it lets them feel safe. You guys are all here for a business, right? You guys are all here to learn how to make significant income on an ongoing basis. Show of hands. All right, good, good. This also applies in a lot of arenas. In 2014, I met this beautiful, gorgeous angel of a woman. It was a movie night, and we're watching the movie Rain Man. I was on the other side of the room, and I heard this beautiful laugh coming from this other side of the room. I was like, I have got to get to know that laugh. That was such a good laugh. And I walked up to her, and I started talking to her. We had this great conversation. At the end of our appointment, our get-together, I didn't ask her if she wants to marry me. I didn't expect her to. If she did, that would be kind of weird. But I was like, you keep talking about your horse here. I would love to meet your horse. I was looking for anything, man, whatever it was. Foot in the door, we're good. By the time we were done with the conversation, dude, I thought I was a modern-day cowboy, man. I was in it. And she's like, yeah, let's go. I said, perfect. What are you doing on Saturday morning? She's like, I don't think anything yet. I said, perfect. I'll pick you up at 8:55. We'll go see your horse. Because 100% of the prospects you pick up show up. So I picked her up. We had this great time. And I was like, man, I had a great time. Based on what you've seen so far, would you have enough interest to continue evaluating further? Great. Here's what needs to happen next. What are you doing on Tuesday? Because you don't leave an appointment until the follow-up is booked. I'm still booking the follow-up. And I kept booking the follow-up until a very key thing happened. See, originally when we started talking, we started dating, we were very interested. It was, hey, someday if we get married, this would be really cool. I noticed one day it shifted from if to when. She goes, so when we get married, this is going to be awesome. I noticed that it stuck. I was like, oh, that's kind of an assumption there. A lot of times with your prospects, they're still kind of in the if mode. And you're kind of still in the if mode. You're qualifying them. But a very key thing happens because they're going to eventually go from if I do this thing, hey, so when I do this thing, what's the, and the when. The when. You book the follow-up until you get the when. You run with them until they're so deep in it, they can't imagine their way out. They can't imagine going back to their life of walking here and going home, and walking here and going home, waking up in a box, by a box, eating out of a box, going to work in a box. Eventually they get put in a box. They stay Joe Nobody, their dash stays blank. And you have the freedom to get them out of it. You keep booking the follow-up. Here's a key thing to this whole deal, though. I found this out later. There's a real key to this whole thing, and it's the key called urgency. I heard it on an Elizabeth Weber audio. She goes, when you create a sense of urgency, you create urgency. Terrible Boston accent, I'm sure, but that was the best I could do. And I was like, I got to create this sense of urgency. How do I create urgency? Because there's, when you get started, there's not a lot going on. There was no system. I was the system. I was the system. And I'm rubbing sticks together, showing the business plan, trying to book the next step. You create urgency by creating value. It comes down to two things, value and vision. You got to create value for every single thing. I'd show the plan on Tuesday, and I'm like, I got more people meet with me on Thursday. Can you make it on Thursday? They're like, I got something going on. It's last minute. It's always last minute, all right? 6 months from now, Miami's going to be last minute. I'm just telling you. It's all last minute. But you create the value. Is there any way you could move that around to make it? It's really important that you're there. I push one time, not to be pushy, but because you don't know. When someone says no, all they're telling you is, what you just described to me is less valuable than what I already had in mind. So what you need to do is increase the value. You don't know what it was. Yeah. Maybe Thursday night is their Netflix night. And they're like, oh man, I need to get up on Netflix for this. But then you push one time and they're like, okay. Yeah, okay, I'll be there. I'll move some stuff around. I'll be there. You push one time because it creates urgency. It creates value. Increase the value of the proposition. You'll have a lot more people moving forward because you created urgency from a sense of urgency. Because you got to create that sense first. And the second step is vision. If you don't have the vision after this weekend, push rewind on your mind, go back to some videos. I don't know how you missed it because there was a lot of vision in this room. Wouldn't you guys agree? It was an amazing weekend. So once you get this vision, you understand where you're going and why you're going there. Here's the most important minute of showing the plan is the 1 minute before you walk in. When you get this right. So many people walk into a meeting trying to convince the other person this is a good idea. They're convincing. You guys want to know a key? Be convinced. this is a good idea. And they will be convinced this is a good idea. Spend less time convincing them, more time convincing yourself, and you will create urgency. Every single time, that urgency will come. Be convinced. Listen to the audios. Listen to JR. Listen to Lauren. Man, Lauren killed it this weekend, didn't she? Woo! So good. What, when, why, how? Man, I loved it. I'm in it. Be convinced. Take that posture, take that vision, and adopt it. I'm going to end with a story. In 1950, there was a lady by the name of Florence Chadwick. Florence Chadwick swam the English Channel both ways. She was the first woman to ever do this, swim the English Channel both ways. And when they finished, they said, man, how's it feel? And she goes, I just hate the little asterisk of first woman. I want to be the first person to ever do something. So she goes back to her home state of California and wants to swim Catalina Island. It's about 20-something miles to Catalina Island from the main shore. And she's sitting there, and she starts to swim. She trained for about 2 months for this, starts to swim. She didn't realize it was going to be a very foggy day, and these guys in boats were following behind her, shooting away the sharks as they were coming up. And she swam, and she swam, and she swam. And eventually she started getting tired. We're about 14 hours into this thing, 15 hours in, 16 hours in, and she turns to her mom, she goes, I'm not going to make it. And her mom says, it's okay, babe, you've already gone so far. Get back in the boat, it's totally fine. And she does. She does. And right as she does, the fog begins to clear, and she realizes she was less than a mile from shore. She came back 2 months later and swam it faster than the first time. And they asked her, how did you do it so much faster? Almost half the time it took her to fail. They said, how'd you do this? And she said, the island was burned into my brain. Every training session I had was burned into my brain. I pictured Catalina Island every morning and every night. And while I was swimming, I pictured it. What is your Catalina Island? What is your vision? What is so clear? Every morning you picture it, every night you picture it, every training session you picture it. Keep that clear in your mind. Let it drive you into Miami. Be convinced and book the follow-ups, and we'll see you guys in 6 months.